2:15 p.m. Mabel's time, Thursday, April 13th, year 947, aboard Devereux, in the time vortex. My external cameras showed a stable time vortex, a widening tunnel, cutting through clouds of time, each infinitesimal speck of moisture that made up the clouds representing an event. For the first time in a long time, the ride was smooth. The only turbulence came from the slight desynchronization of Devereux's time drives. The translucent walls were a rolling calm. The 3.3-kilometer across city ship glided through, enveloped in its protective shield, one of the most powerful kinds in the universe. The star drives hummed in near-perfect harmony, working like a charm. I relaxed, slumping slightly in the chair. It would be a safe flight, after all. Indicators blinked on and off on the holographic ceiling. Knowing the trip could take a bit, our ship being as big as it was, I opened a channel to the control room, hoping to stave off boredom. As the connection was made, laughter came ringing through the chair room. "What's going on up there?" I asked, amused. Apparently they were having a good time without me. "They were just—" the doctor began, and then broke down into chuckling. "We were just reminding the doctor about how we pulled his TARDIS off that train in the Old West," Darren cut in, and then laughed some more. "And how they almost," he wheezed with laughter, "how they almost swatted me off the roof of the parlor car, with my own machine as a battering ram." "Yeah," Alex said. "He only barely caught the lip of the doors before the thing swung away. They had me dangling from my TARDIS in the middle of the desert. Wash was trying to set me down somewhere nice." The other's laughs covered his voice. "Almost had an unpleasant ride through a cactus. Thank God Rose was there to pull me up out of the way. You should have seen her face, poor Rose. She spent the whole time just staring out of the doors at me. It was fantastic." I had missed this whole fiasco, which had occurred less than a week earlier. There was a party for TTO operatives on a chartered train, somewhere in the southwest U.S., in 1898. I wasn't able to attend, unfortunately, but apparently, from what I understood, the train was hijacked and sent at full speed towards a dead-end track. Almost everyone was able to make it back to the TARDIS except for the Ninth, who was hosting the event. He did, however, manage to end up on top of the train, for whatever reason. The Serenity, with Darren and Alec on board, had shown up, on command, to hoist the TARDIS off of the doomed train, but they were too quick, and almost picked it up and carried it away before the doctor was able to get in. "Are you going to try doing that?" I asked, cutting through the laughter. "A big outing with everyone? 'Cause I heard you'll be going soon." "I've been thinking about it. Every time I try to organize something, it just goes to hell, honestly." "I'd work on that, actually. I know a great place to go, so long as we can get there." "Where would that be?" "This really nice solar system I stumbled on a while back. I'd actually come upon it twice, and it took me quite a while to realize it was the same place. I found it once during the invasion of Mabel's and was sent there again, on a continuum restoration mission a few months later. The only reason I figured out it was the same place was because of the Stargate address. It was a huge solar system, with the amount of livable planets going into the double-digit numbers. I'd helped restart a revolution that had been sidetracked with the abrupt appearance of a random enemy timeship. We'd yet to track it down, but we're setting up a base there in case the ship tried to return. Also, I did get a bit friendly with the locals, as did my crew." Darren perked up instantly, knowing what I was talking about. "I'd love to go back there," she shouted. "I haven't even seen Sally Miss since we left. We have to get them on here after they die. It'll be amazing." "I have to say," Alec noted, "that it would be really cool to have them on board. This place is unspeakably empty." "All right, then. I'll talk to them next time we land there." I paused. "Hopefully during the Ninth's party. What do you think?" "I think it's a fantastic idea, getting everyone on here for a gathering. Going on an adventure that won't endanger our lives." "In 3 days I'm gone, so I'll try to get everyone on here Thursday. You'd better be docked." Suddenly Sarah entered the fray. "He'll be there, I'll make sure of it. We need to make the TTO proud of Devereux, however we do it." She sighed. "As if we didn't draw enough attention to ourselves at the end of the war." "Apparently we didn't. The city's still empty." "We've got enough crew for the job," I defended. "But it doesn't feel like it," she stressed. Then added, "No offense, guys." "None taken," they replied in unison. I conceded defeat. The city, however beautiful, was empty. It was designed for hundreds of thousands, made by one of the most advanced races to ever roam the universe. I sat back in my command chair, barely listening to the continued chatter from the control room. I just concentrated on the silver hologram of the city above me, piloting as best I could. Almost half an hour later, a small blue notification appeared in the top right corner of my view. I had been anticipating its appearance for the past few minutes, and it meant it was time to power off the time drives and drop out of the vortex. The yellow tint that had clung to every surface slowly melted away as the drives shut down. The time vortex shredded around us, and we dropped from the semi-bright, cloudy tunnel to the inky blackness of space. I dimmed the lights in the room so that I could see the holographic camera feed better. The deep opalescent sheen of the Covenant supercarrier's alien metal blended in with the utter darkness of empty space. Only a few yellow lights gave away the ship's presence and allowed me to eventually pick out the 27-kilometer-long purple shape that is the long night of Solace. Moments after I noticed it, Alec managed to pin a beacon on the massive ship's location. The room tilted slightly as I engaged the star drives and sent us on a course to dock. The area around the long night of Solace shimmered as their shield dropped away, and I watched very carefully as ours shifted subtly in hue. Darren was working to recalibrate our shielding to keep the atmosphere around Devereaux but not damage the long night of Solace as we docked with it. The enormous smooth shape grew in my holographic view, making even the might of my city ship seem insignificant. An unnoticeable speck on the side of the purple wall became the center of my attention. It was a door to the outside, a docking port. On my view it was highlighted. Its magnetic couplers were busy realigning to match ours, one of many hundreds of different door types on ships across the TTO's fleet. The ports on the long night of Solace were redesigned from the ground up to fit every single ship we could possibly have, or at least as many were feasible. As the edges of our ships neared, I switched from the high-zoom cameras at the tops of the tallest spires to the 1-to-1 ratio cameras closest to our external door. The supercharged electromagnets finally kicked in, and our two enormous hulks of metal connected with a resounding, metallic clack. The long night of Solace reactivated its shield, and the static bubble, fading to transparency, connected with their yellow Atlantean shield at the edges, and wavered disagreeably. Like a glowing tumor, Devereaux hung on to the side of the long, dark object. Content that we were connected well enough, I stood from my chair. Its blue lights blinked out, and the room brightened. All of the holographic views disappeared, and Sarah came in their place. We walked out of the room to the transporter, zapped back up to the control room. Everyone had stepped back from their consoles except for Nick, who was trying to route a call to the double-sided view screen hanging against the wall. The connection was made, and Halsey reappeared once again. "Very timely, Admiral," she said with the faintest of smiles. She seemed happy, or at least more so. "I contacted you," she checked her watch, "barely 2 minutes ago." "Well, what can I say?" I replied. "I'm a timely person." Everyone else in the control room laughed. They knew full well that I was hardly on time for anything. The doctor especially, who had known me the longest. In fact, it was the Ninth himself, very shortly after he regenerated, who requisitioned me. Now, I hardly saw him any more. Halsey continued unabated. There were about 36 technicians ready to board, and the procedure should start, or should take, about an hour or so. If you could open your door, they'll be happy to start work. "Glad you've been thinking of us, Catherine. I'll let him in." I spun around and slapped a glass key on the console behind me. The docking port slid open to allow the scientists in. As I turned back around to face her, I smiled. "Mind telling me what you've cooked up this time?" She was about to answer when something else grabbed her attention. She began to speak quickly to someone off to her left, and the lights behind her began to dim. "Admiral," she said softly and carefully, "a ship dropped out less than 3 AU from her current position. We're rigging for silent running as to not be spotted. I suggest you do the same." "I'm on it," Sarah announced, and then disappeared. "You should come over here if we are to talk," she recommended. "I assume that this ship has nothing to do with us, but you never know who could be listening in." After muttering something about that wretched Parangoski, she continued, "Meet me in the steam lab." The last of the lights behind her dimmed, and the connection cut out before I could protest. With a sudden, dull thud, the room went black. The light in the window slowly dimmed as the rest of the city shut down. After that, the few remaining running lights on the long night of Solace blinked out, leaving us in as close to utter darkness as the luminescent Atlantean shield would allow. "I would hope you'd leave us a path or something," Darren said. On cue, a third of the stair lights came on, giving us just enough of a view to safely navigate the grand staircase and get to the nearest transporter. We all crammed in, zapping over to the docking port with the push of a button. The last of the technicians strolled by as we stepped out. They hefted toolboxes, carried radios, and wore personal shields in case of emergency. "They've really gotten more advanced around here," the ninth noted. "Impressed?" I asked. "Decently." As we crossed the threshold into the purple corridors of the long night of Solace, we were met with a map built into the wall. I stopped and stared at it. On my left, Darren did the same, as did Nick on hers. Alec looked in on my right. Behind us, the doctor looked over my shoulder at the map as well. On a 27-kilometer-long supercarrier, it helps to know where you're going, and they all seem to understand this well. After some time of confusion, Darren leaned past me to look Alec in the face. "I dare you," she began deviously, "to have a pan-galactic gargle blaster." Alec looked at her as if she'd grown another head. "What in the universe is that?" "It's a drink. Trust me, you'll love it." She grabbed him by the hand and began towing him towards the stern of the vessel. Nick trailed them, his voice fading off into the distance as he said, "I've heard it's like having your brain smashed out by a slice of lemon." "Wrapped around a large gold brick," the doctor finished as they rounded a corner. He turned to me. "Want to get a drink?" I straightened my jacket. "I'd love to, but I've got to talk to Halsey. I asked her to tell me what she's doing on my ship, not just going to go have a drink now." "Ah, well, wouldn't want to have her angry with you, would you now?" He turned to walk away, then spun on his heel and walked back to me, smiling. "I'll go with you. I'd like to see exactly what's going on around here." As we turned to walk towards the steam lab, the main lights clicked off, plunging the corridor into darkness. Slowly, red emergency lights warmed. "Well, I guess that's silent running," I said. 2:52 p.m. Mabel's time, Thursday, April 13th, year 947. Aboard the long night of Solace. Slowly we proceeded through the massive ship. Our shoes clacked on the glassy floors, waxed to an impeccable shine. As dozens of other TTO operatives passed us, we were both given salutes, bows, and various other shows of respect from cultures and species across the universe. We had docked in an odd location, at a port far towards the bow. To descend to the laboratories behind the main hangar, we had to cross the threshold. The threshold was one of two spots where the ship split in three from a slip-space bomb during the fall of Reach, and work was constantly being put into these weakened sections of the repaired vessel. When the long night of Solace was selected as our next recovery operation, we knew we'd be in for the long haul. One section, the stern, had fallen down through the atmosphere to the planet, and lay there for long after the Human Covenant War had ended. The bow was left in orbit, and dragged into a collection pile for scrap, high above the North Pole of the planet. Ascendant Justice was also in this pile for a time. The middle section, the majority of the ship, was forcefully pushed into slipspace. It miraculously remained intact for the duration of the impromptu journey, and appeared safely many light years from the nearest star, Sirius. The easy part was finding all of the pieces. Where they went, save for the middle section, was effectively documented. We towed the bow and the center together and began patching them, after supplying a surrogate power source through a different junk ship, which was also left in the pile at Reach's North Pole. It wasn't nearly enough to power everything, but it let us have lights and oxygen while we worked on the present 2/3 of the massive ship. It was almost a year before we extracted the stern of the long night of Solace from the surface of Reach. After reassembling the deorbited chunk of metal, we towed it to where the rest of the ship was and began patching it up. The reactors were completely rebuilt, and 6 months later, the ship could run under its own power. Yet over a century and a half after that, repairs are still being done. She has 17 time drives, more than any other TTO ship, and cannot fit in Mabel's. Because of this, the long net of Solace usually stays in orbit, around the restaurant at the end of the universe, our backup site in case of emergency, but occasionally traveled, as it was doing now. Ahead of us, there were few lights. Empty scaffolding lined both sides of the hall. The glassy floor took on a scorched demeanor as we neared the threshold. A few welders and technicians worked on a power coupling on one side of the corridor, their torches creating flashing lights that reflected off of the arched purple walls. Hastily fastened titanium floor panels marked the exact line where the ship split. They clanked as we walked on them, their welds having weakened after 170 years of time-traveling stress. Sparks fell from a gap in the ceiling, and I looked up to see another team of welders in the corridor above, fixing the floor. There was a thick gash in the ceiling, bridged by the same gray metal we were standing on. We passed the threshold into the center of the ship, and the world seemed to brighten. This section was the least damaged of the three, and the floor and walls were near perfect in their shine. Even the red emergency lights glare. "That was spooky," I heard the doctor murmur. I nodded in agreement. We made a beeline for an elevator and took it to its lowest level. In transit, the silent running protocols came to an end. It dropped us out on the catwalks above the main hangar, a massive rectangular bay where we sent whole ships, 2 at a time, to be refurbished. As the lift unloaded, we stepped out onto the dizzying heights. The floor of the walkways were steel plating with holes drilled in a pattern, so I could see clearly down through the many layers of workers, clamoring over the unending sorrow and the Ishkil. Most wore jet packs or anti-grav packs, to allow them three-dimensional mobility. At the bow towards the end of the hangar was an enormous shield door, holding in the atmosphere of the bay, while allowing support ships to enter and leave, most at the moment bound for Devereaux. This space was the long net of Solace's center of attention. The bustle consumed us, and we began moving towards the stern wall. 2 mechanics and their Horogok helper bumped past as we entered a stairwell, still hanging high above the bay. A Kino hovered by, a mobile flying camera ball, the precursor to the sentient monitors that the Forerunners ended up building. 2 more chased after it in rapid succession. I glanced down again, and something between the 2 ships caught my eye. "I think Halsey's down there," I said. "What?" the doctor asked. "How could you possibly see her from all the way up here?" I was certain. No, I'm telling you, she's right below us, between the ships." "So what, then? Are we going to keep walking, or break out the rope and rappel down?" "I have something better in mind." Ahead, on the left, was a refueling platform. I picked up my pace and the doctor followed, our jackets flapping. The catwalks creaked as we ran the few dozen feet to our destination. I grabbed a support and swung around the corner, jumping the 2-foot gap to the platform, steel clattering. Right behind me the 9th did the same, and I immediately realized my plan. There was a rack of bullfrogs, the engineers' jet packs, on the wall, and I was reaching for one. The bullfrogs had a harness that you strapped into, distributing the weight of the 50-pound all-aluminum jetpack across the wearer's entire body. I leaned against the wall and pulled the straps over my shoulders and under my legs. Pulling them taut, I stood up, taking notice of my new center of gravity. It had been a while since I last used one of these. The doctor was already leaning out of the rear entrance to the room, when someone came pounding down the catwalk towards us. A junior engineer of no more than 20 years old rounded the corner, and, upon seeing us strapped into the bullfrogs, said, "What are you doing? You're not allowed to have those. You're not engineers." He was right. We weren't wearing engineer patches. But while the doctor sported no patch, I had an admiral rank designation just below where the left strap crossed my shoulder. Realizing who we were, he stopped, confused. "Doctor? Admiral?" he stammered. "Congratulations," the doctor said. "You busted us." He mockingly held up his hands, teetering on the edge of the platform. "You can arrest us at the bottom." He tipped backwards off the platform. Through the floor I watched him ignite his pack and make a three-point landing on the catwalk below. I turned to the ensign with a wry smile on my face. "It's been a pleasure knowing you, J.E." I lit my jet pack. "I'll see you at the bottom." I leapt off through the gap in front of him, the floor passing inches from my face. The wind whipped as I plummeted past 3 layers of permanent catwalks, and then flew through banks of mobile unstationary scaffolds, which moved on rails that hung as far down as 100 feet off the floor. I jerked to the right to dodge a girder and let the pack go full blast, in order to make a soft landing on the blackened hull of the Ishkil. With a thud, the doctor landed beside me. "Race to the bottom?" I asked. "Could be dangerous," he threw back. I was feeling audacious, so I mocked a trip over my own heel, and fell over the edge, saying, "Worth it!" Coming down with the pack half on was a lot more like free running than it was skydiving. I dodged pieces of scaffolding, rails, girders, and cargo being hoisted about. I jumped off of things and landed and ran on others. All the time I could hear the doctor right behind me, and the speck that I had thought was Halsey grow in my view. When I was just a few 100 feet up, running along a rail for the unstationary scaffolds, I got hit by an updraft. It smelled like the inside of a roundhouse. Grease and steam and smoke all mixed together. That was when I knew I'd been right. But it wasn't just Halsey. It was her favorite new toy, the war machine. I hopped off the rail and dropped the last 100 yards to land right in front of her. The kino that she had been tracking me with came to a rest in her palm. The 9-foot-tall steampunk monster leaned slightly as he finished watching my descent. He watched me through dull, tinted green eyes. Cogs and pistons whirred and hummed. The war machine was something that Halsey and her group of scientists, including myself, came up with. An iron, steam-powered beast that was more than a match for any life form out there. She held out her hand, and he did the same. She placed a kino and its controller in his oversized palm and said, "Put this away, please." "Command accepted," it boomed. The machine raised its head and turned slowly towards the wall behind her. The war machine began a series of heavy footsteps towards the recharging station, the noise slowly dissipating as it got farther away. She turned her eyes skyward again. The doctor glided down and made an impeccable landing to my right, prompting her to give him a faint smile. "Make an entrance or don't enter at all, I suppose," she sighed. "Good to see you, Doctor." "And you, Catherine?" "Admiral, there's much for you to see. I feel that you'll enjoy your ship more now than you ever did." "Well, I was hoping you'd make it better and not worse. So that's exactly the result I would want." "Of course," she said plainly. Her emotionlessness was in rare form today, it seemed. "Please, dispose of your bullfrogs and come with me."